Hey, good morning. We are in Fort Worth, Texas, where we're installing a little over a 13 and a half kilowatt solar array, actually multiple arrays, and a Tesla Powerwall 3 battery. We've got with us here Mr. Ben Paulson, or Pastor Paulson. He's the head minister at North Point Baptist Church in Hurst, so right around the corner from us. Ben, you and I first met a few years ago, I think, right?
Probably so, yes.
I think at the time we were still going door to door, everybody's favorite thing. And
I actually love talking to solar people door to door. And so I talk to at least two every year and set up appointments, and just never, the economics for me never quite panned out because I'm a crazy value guy, watch my pennies on all sorts of stuff. My wife hates that, but it benefits us. And here we are now after a few years.
that's amazing. And I think, and totally true from firsthand experience, I probably followed up with you once a year, something like that. And, what about what we're doing now finally made it pencil out for you?
Of course, prices came down in certain things and components and stuff, which was hoping for. And really now, what I was looking for was savings now, but also savings in the future. We expect prices to go up on things, but I wanted to save money now too. And finally the numbers hit right where, wow, that's going to happen.
That's awesome. And so you talk to about two solar guys every year. Potentially they might skip your house now, but
Hopefully, yeah.
Obviously that means you've been around the block a few times. So you've heard a lot of different angles, a lot of different strategies or just ways of going about it. What types of things have you heard in the past that you ended up not doing? What were some of the things that held you back from going solar? And then we'll talk about what about this made it the right thing.
Okay. There have been some new plans also that have come about that particularly benefited me with my tax situation and stuff. And the one thing though that I just couldn't get over was so many of them had yearly escalation, and I'm just not a fan of that because so many would say, well, and we project in 15 years power is going to cost this much, but we're only escalating 3% a year, 2.99% a year. But that's a guess. And so to me, just knowing that there's no escalation, it is what it is. And I know maybe that works for different people better than it worked for me. But for me, in my mindset, that helped be a sell to me, is not knowing it wasn't going to go up. And then particularly with you guys for a couple years too, it seemed like with the battery was not included, and so you're always dependent on the grid. So many other companies said, well, we'll offset you 57% and get free nights, so that should do it. I was too skeptical about that. I actually took all my data from Smart Meter Texas, did all these calculations from different times of the year, figuring out how much usage I would have and all these different things. Then I took this and came up with a dollar amount that I thought would still cost me from the power company. Then throw it into Chat GPT, and it came up within $10 of what I had calculated. So I felt pretty smart, but it just showed that with the escalation and all that kind of stuff, that was not the best value for me personally. And so then when I did the same thing with the same plan stuff here, it's like I may have to pay the company $5 a month to Encore. Everybody has to, and that's it.
That's awesome. Great recap analysis. So what many folks have shown you in the past, maybe even myself years ago, I don't recall specifically, but is they've listened to you, which is good. And that is because of your tax situation, maybe it's not, you don't have enough, you're not paying enough income taxes to really realize the value of that tax credit.
Yes.
And so everybody's mind went in a decent direction, which is a third-party owned option, third-party ownership. But the issue is the traditional PPAs, power purchase agreements, have either a relatively low starting point, probably about where you're at right now, and a yearly escalator. So every single year, sure, it starts at $100 a month or whatever it is, but it's going to be $103, then $107, then $112, so on and so forth every single year. And so So that makes sense. You unpacked a lot there too. The batteries as well. So definitely seen some significant reductions in battery costs in the most recent years. So that really helps us out where you could be totally self-resilient, self-reliant, self-sustaining, limit any amount of transaction to and from Encore, whichever retail electric provider you're with. Because as your solar system produces power during the day, we're producing 100% or greater of what you're using. You're going to store your surplus in your batteries and then use that battery's electricity at night to limit and reduce any usage from the grid. Even still, you're still talking about potentially doing a free nights plan.
Yeah, lots of plans out there, and unfortunately, you still have to kind of figure out what's best for you and what your scenario. But I think we'll find something that again keeps it to a very minimum still, where even this year I'll be saving money from the start. And so that's one thing that I was definitely looking for is the savings now, knowing there'll be savings in the future along the way. And so still looking at the free nights options from a couple of companies, so that no matter what happens today, we've charged it during the night, and then we're fresh and ready to go in the morning, whether it's winter, whether it's summer, any of those different times.
100% correct. And that was the other thing that you uplifted is some of the pitfalls of other people that you didn't want to fall into. And that is a lot of solar companies right now are saying, oh, let's just do a 60% offset. And the fear there is exactly what's already happened and is already occurring. The grid electric companies, I don't have control over them. Ben doesn't have control over them. And so we see the ground shifting from underneath us, which just leaves room for opportunity for a 60% offset system to not work for you in 3 years. Where if and when the grid electric companies wisen up and they decide, hey, a lot of these solar and battery clients are on these free nights plans and we're losing our tail end on it, you can no longer do that anymore. And so that's what we saw a few years ago when folks were going solar only. We had true one-to-one net metering. Ground shifted from underneath us. They're now excluding the transmission fees. In a solar only system in this area, about 60% of the time you're importing power from the grid, nighttime, crummy weather days, so forth, over half the time. And so if you're doing a solar only setup, right now today you could trade one-to-one on the energy price. You can wash out and eliminate your energy charges. You could only reduce your transmission fees by about 40%. Whereas with a battery, in a true self-consumption mode, you're going to limit any amount of usage from the grid. So in 2 or 3 years, if they no longer offer a free nights plan to Ben, then it's not going to matter. He's going to be able to re-optimize the settings of his battery, so that way he just doesn't sell or buy electricity from the grid. So we're setting him up today with a 100% offset system with battery capacity. Seems like he's probably going to use the grid's game against him for right now, really ensure that he's using nothing from the grid during the build hours. But if that changes in a couple of years, he's not going to have to scramble to increase production to offset the remaining usage that he's going to have in the house.
I'd like to add too that before making this decision, I was on a great rate with the power company, 8 cents a kilowatt hour for 3 years. It was amazing, and then it went off, and suddenly the bills were more than doubled with the electric company. And so I went around and actually talked to more than a dozen of my neighbors we're in the River Trails neighborhood, talked to a dozen of them to see what their thoughts were on the solar. And I ran into a lot of people who think they were at the one-to-one, and then it ran out. The companies changed their policies and stuff, and now they were having to pay a lot more in their electric bills. People were, some that were environmentally conscious were like, it's okay, I'm willing to do that. But others like me, looking for the savings and the value, were stuck, and we're not very, very happy with it. And so when I then compare what those people had to what I was going to get, it was completely different. So I'm excited. I'm excited again to be able to be off the grid if I wanted to, but here we are, and I'm excited for getting to save now and save later.
I love that. And the funny thing is, we've been retrofitting batteries into existing solar systems. I've done more battery only retrofits than I did solar systems with batteries in the first few years of my solar career. So anybody in the neighborhood that you run into that are experiencing those issues, it's relatively cost effective to swap out or add in a battery to make all that happen. Final little touch point on that. And so what we're able to do for our clients, right? We run into people all the time. Maybe someone is on Social Security or disability. They're not really making enough of an income to be paying income taxes. The opposite side of that is true. We've got clients that are really high income earners that invest in real estate, and they're using an aggressive tax strategy to reduce and limit what they're even paying in taxes. And so in both of those instances, the type of financial solution that we came up for Ben would work similarly for somebody else as well. And what that is, it's called a prepaid power purchase agreement or a prepaid lease. And you're able to finance that prepayment. And so all we do is we're pre-applying the value of the tax credits. That way you don't have to claim them. And then the rest is set up so that way you got a fixed, consistent monthly bill. It never goes up, it never increases. Anytime you throw additional monies towards it, it's automatically applied towards principal. They re-amortize that and reduce the minimum monthly payment required every single time with no minimums, no fees, anything like that. And so that enables more and more people to take advantage of all of the incentives that are out there, so that way you can get all the savings, similar savings that Ben's experiencing. And in our conversations, Ben's reference point was always that electricity plan from 3 years ago. And so that made our job fun. And but thankfully, just where everything's going right now, of course, in today's right this moment, there's a lot of talks about tariffs and all sorts of things. We're not overly concerned or worried about that because there's other economic forces that could, reduce costs in other ways. And so whenever you're watching this video, we're actually rolling out a new tool that, Ben, I think you would really like. It's just not available yet. By the time this video releases, I have a feeling it's going to be live. And that's a design it yourself solar tool. So on our website, so long as somebody knows, just like you did, how much electricity do I use per year? And if they watch some of our videos that teach them how should I size my battery, how many batteries do I need for the amount of electricity that I'm using, all they have to do is type in their address, their kilowatt hour annual usage, click go, and it's going to churn out a design right there for them with all the pricing and everything. So it'll make it a lot more streamlined, simple. I know you want to talk to me, but you won't have to. You can kind of do it yourself.
Well, yeah, ironically, I teach a 7th grade science class at a homeschool Christian academy, and literally today we talked about that. You didn't even know that. We talked about how God in Genesis gave dominion of man over the earth, but as a part of that, dominion, like a king is supposed to take care of his people underneath him, we're supposed to also take care of the earth that God has given us dominion over also. And so we have to be responsible. Not to be responsible, to be wasteful is not what God's about. He's about using the resources as he intended for us to, but also to take care of those for future generations, I believe.
I've always felt very similar, like the purest form of God's power. The sun powers everything on earth. The plants grow from the sun. The animals eat the plants, and then we eat everything, and so we're really distilling down to one of the purest, truest forms of power. A lot of folks will argue, well, it just is going to take so much mining, and how impactful to the earth is it to mine all this stuff? I think the perspective that a lot of folks are missing there is most all of the materials, like over 95% of the materials in solar panels, in batteries, are recyclable at the end of the useful life of this equipment. And so in 25, 30 years, when this stuff is bugging out, we're going to be able to recycle that. We're going to get the lithium in the battery. It's done a chemical reaction. They're going to be able to reverse that chemical reaction and recycle it back to its original lithium form, which can then get recycled into a new battery. So while yes, we got to mine for materials and get more materials to build this equipment, that's going to be a one-time mining until we reach whatever that equilibrium of power is for the world, and then we're not going to need to mine any longer. We'll just be able to recycle, reuse all of those raw materials again.
Well, I would think initially, nonprofit, through perhaps some of the programs that are already there, which we talked about the other day, potentially that others would grab a benefit, but then pass that benefit on to a church, ultimately then saving money for the people who are giving and sacrificing to give towards the church ministries. That saves money, that allows it to be available for other things besides an electric bill. And so that in itself, to me, would be a great benefit if a program like that could come in and step in with nonprofits or churches. We use a lot of electricity at our church, lots and lots. And so any savings would be huge and be awesome.
That's really interesting. So yeah, if a congregation were able to eliminate the operating expense of the utility bill, you'd just be able to focus those dollars towards the mission, right?
Absolutely.
The electricity helps you get to the mission because people don't want to go sit in a 100-degree building to hear the good word. But so that's interesting. There are definitely some unique plans out there. Same way that we pre-applied the value of the tax credits here, that could be an available option on a nonprofit. There's definitely churches around the nation that have done it. There are municipalities and school districts that have solar powering those facilities. The unique thing that I think would actually help, I would imagine, I don't know, there's not a lot of nighttime activity happening at the church, is there?
Not a ton, no, there's not.
So most of the time when the building and the facilities are using electricity is during the day. Anybody's guess, roll of the dice, whether the sun is shining that day or not, right? That's going to vary, be anecdotal. But because of that just means that you're not importing electricity at night, or not very much of it, maybe refrigeration and things like that. If I had to guess, a church or a schoolhouse is not going to require a huge battery solution because you're not really using it at night. Instead, it would just be sunshine during the day, most of the time when folks are there, and then some small batteries to power refrigeration. Things are just always a security system, something to that effect.
But just showing that there are a lot of people that, especially today, especially young people today, are looking for churches or any organization they partner with to make a difference in the community, or even some environmentally. And so in our area, honestly, one of those could be recycling, which doesn't hit solar, but that's not readily available for big groups and things like that. It's a much harder thing for those. But if they did see a church with a solar solution, or even just promoting that, perhaps for their constituents, their congregation, then that could key other people into saying, okay, they're more than just about themselves. That's what a lot of people are. Everyone's about themselves, but when they see a group where there's a church or a school or a community putting something benefit towards others, whether it's the environment or other people, they appreciate that. They do want to be a part of something like that along the way. Well, I would say, number one, I would just say Nick has been so responsive on things. I've been very impressed by that. He's probably not impressed with my responsiveness a couple of times, but he's been very responsive, very, very respectful. We went at it a couple times just on number stuff and on some things. I have some previous knowledge from my 7 years of talking to people about some things. But it was always that we came back and continued the discussion, the conversation. And also, the fact that he called me back in January after we had talked earlier, and I told him my tax situation and something new came available to help with that. And so he kept that in the notes, and they called back and mentioned that very thing. And it's like, oh wow, great. Well, let's talk. Let's definitely see what could happen along the way. And again, with the Solar Scouts, I appreciate that Nick is the CEO, right? Owner, CEO of the company, and yet he is so responsive. And he's here today with the install, that he takes that much personal investment in it. And the company has not been around as long as other companies have been, but because of his investment in it, and that made me think, you know what, I'm gonna choose to go with them, plus all the other added benefits I mentioned on the value that we're receiving at this time also. And so, again, I hope that we can do an update in a month or so after we see again how the bills come out, and I'm able just to say, look, here's the bills. Man, it's real, it's true, and so I'm excited for that time also.
Absolutely. 100%. We'll do a monthly follow-up, and probably 6 months down the road, a year down the road, all that stuff. And then you inspired me real quick. So I'm going to do a sign off, and then so hey, we're in Fort Worth, Texas. We're installing a little over a 13.5 kilowatt solar system with a Tesla Powerwall 3. We're going to do updates along the way with Ben, and that way you could track his journey to see the proof in the pudding there. And so that's exactly what we want. And Ben, I really appreciate you and your time. And
appreciate you, Nick. Appreciate it.
Thank you.